Join us as we go beyond the pixels in the Gamer's Edge podcast, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of video gaming. In each episode, we transcend the boundaries of mere pixels, immersing ourselves in the very essence of gaming and esports. Exclusive interviews with rising stars poised to redefine the industry, conversations with seasoned veterans sharing their tales of triumph and tribulation, insights from coaches and commentators who breathe life into every battle, as well as industry leaders that create the heartbeat of esports. Whether you harbour dreams of becoming a professional gamer, are a devoted fan eager to explore the hidden narratives, or simply find yourself captivated by the intricate workings of gaming and esports, the Gamer's Edge is your front row ticket. So fellow gamers, let's unite and explore. For in the dynamic landscapes of virtual competition, the Gamer's Edge podcast is your beacon, guiding you through the labyrinth of gaming excellence. So get ready for a thrilling adventure through the virtual arenas, where victory, camaraderie, and endless adventure await.
Welcome in, guys, to another episode of the Gamer's Edge podcast. I, of course, am your host, Cody Rival Brusso, and what a treat for us today as we've got Greg, aka RawGreg, in the house with us. Thank you so much. I know you and the boys are prepping. You just got done with Qualifier 2. You've got another one coming up. You and Slater and the boys looking sharp. But right off the bat, I'm going to get right into it. Do you feel like NA is being disrespected out in the world right now?
Yeah. I mean, I think the narrative's gotten a little bit better in the past, I would say like week, where I mean, I've definitely had my fair share of criticisms of some of the casters and the higher up people in our scene that I think are just talking about NA in a bad light. You know, and that's not to say that we don't deserve it. I mean, we have got destroyed the past couple lands, but it's a new season. So all I want to see from our scene right now is let the pros in NA do the smack talking. Let the EU pros smack talk us, and don't let the casters and the coaches. That's not what this is about. If the coaches and the casters are shit talking, that's the issue.
Yeah, no, I feel you. You got to let your play do the talking, and plus the players on the pitch. It's always been a weird thing in all of sports. You know, when the coach behind the mic, who's not out on the field, is the one, you know, running his mouth the most. It was always to comparison.
It makes no sense. And it looks a certain way to the players too. So I mean, the whole NA EU thing is been a thing since season 1 of our game, because everybody's like, well, EU grinds over there, NA grinds over here. They have to meet in the middle, and then we had some great battles doing it. I just think that right now everything's so overblown with the NA EU talks that like we're just getting to the point where it's like, okay, cool. You guys think EU is better? We think NA is better. Cool. Let the players shit talk when we get to the LAN. But you got casters, you got coaches, you got people that aren't in the scene just talking about how bad NA is. It's like, what are we doing? I don't even understand what we're doing anymore.
I'm sure we'll end up circling back to that, but let me get a little bit of background. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey in the world of Rocket League? Because a lot of people don't even know where you're a coach right now. You were a player before, and I believe that was all mid. It was Sway. It was triple commit, and we shoot greens.
Oh yeah, I mean triple commit, we shoot greens. It's like the same. We went through different team names because, just circling it back. I mean, I started playing this game in late 2015. So right after the beta, I got in. I started playing the game a little bit with my boys, and we had fun with it. We're like, oh, this game's fun. I went back home, started playing it again. I was like, no, this game's really, really fun. And then I just kept playing and playing and playing. So then all my neighbors that, were around basically my area, they kept getting worse and I just kept getting better. So then I went from PS4. I was on a lot of the top of the leaderboards from PS4 playing rank 2s, rank 3s. I didn't even know esports existed, to be honest with you. But I just saw leaderboards. I'm like, oh, I'm going to climb that leaderboard. And then somebody told me about, somebody messaged me on PlayStation, and they were like, hey, there's an organization. If you team with me, I'll pay you, they're going to pay us $40-50 a month. I'm like, why? Why would they pay us $50 a month? They're like, oh, just rep their name and everything. I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. I thought it was a scam. So I'm like, nope, absolutely not. Because at this time, by the time I got in, this is 2015, 2016. So it was I was already 22 years old. I had no idea about esports. So that all ends up happening. And then eventually I started looking into esports and seeing how real it was. And at that time, it was starting to really, really gather steam. And yeah, I came to PC. Like I bought a PC, I invested in it because at this time I was working as a medical sales rep for a company called Steris, and I was making good money, but I was like, I also like competing in Rocket League. So I got a PC and I just started grinding, and then eventually I met, my analyst slash like assistant coach right now, Kevpert. We formed this little group called Lights Out, which was just like a group of dudes that loved studying the game, but like wanted to play the game the right way. We did some insane stuff over at Lights Out. Like people used to call us cringe. People used to like, these guys were hard sweating ranked. And then eventually me and Kev split, and I found my teammate that I ended up teaming with this guy named Savvy Seal for about 4 years. And that was all mid, sway, triple commit. We shoot greens. That was my teammate through all those. Just all mid was a different org. Sway was like one of those like smaller tier orgs.
Yeah.
And then I, all the way up until I was a coach. So my playing career was mostly like I was in the bubble, like right outside of like that pro contention. I made it to the qualifier match of RLRS twice. No ice, man. No ice.
It happens. Way back in the day, Halo 3, it was the same thing. I ended up moving from Victoria to San Antonio, roommating with some of my teammates for the Halo squad, and we made it all the way to MLG qualifiers, but not enough to get over the hump. Good enough to get there, but not.
No, and it's crazy too, because like a lot of the kids that come up in this game now, like we're talking like, when I was like a fringe, like I would say like a bubble player, was like 2018, 2019, like right around that time period. And like 2017, like I think I was on like a top 12 team in North America, but that wasn't as big as it is now. You know what I mean? So then these new kids coming up, they hear about you like, oh, Greg the coach. And I'm like, man, dude, I was a player at one time. Like you guys don't know about me, but I'm 30. So it's just things change. Like the meta changes, and like all these new kids coming up. I mean, this game is so different than the way it looked back when, like, even when I was playing.
Now because when I cast it, I'm a huge. You see the hockey stick back here. I'm a huge hockey guy. I played soccer all my life. Even coached youth soccer when I got out of high school. Now, for me, casting it, I always feel like I try and blend hockey and soccer, and even some of the Rocket League, I guess you could say, lingo, I don't really use too much. I use what I normally know from hockey and, soccer.
Yep.
Is there a more comparison that you find between those real life sports with this esport, or is this just a totally different animal? And has that helped you develop your coaching style?
Well, growing up, like I was always football. I grew up in Cleveland. It was like, you're a Browns fan or you don't exist. And then it was, the Cavs and the Indians / Guardians. So it was like, those were the three main sports. I didn't really follow hockey that much, but I started like playing like hockey video games. Never really got into soccer, but I see the parallels more towards hockey than I do soccer. And it's more about possession of the ball in this game, where like in hockey, like you could clear a puck and it could go around, but that's like a really, really good thing to do. In soccer, sometimes you see it, but the idea of throwing possession away behind the net, keeping it on that side, is more of, to me, it feels like hockey rather than soccer. But the physicality aspect of hockey too, where you can check people, it perfectly translates to demos in Rocket League. Whereas soccer, it's more, you can get a lot more passes off. It's a lot more finesse. I feel like Rocket League is a lot more in your face. I would say dynamic rather than soccer.
Nice. That I 100% agree. Being a huge hockey fan, that's kind of where I take it, with just a little touches, the flicks and everything like that is right where I kind of get into that soccer aspect. But a lot of it, the one-timers and everything like that. So I appreciate that hockey concept.
I think so. I think, and even like a lot of the bubble kids that like, when I was coming up in the game, the ones that played team sports hockey understood the game at a higher level than the other kids that were just coming in, maybe not playing team sports. There was a lot of kids, like, I'm not going to shout them out, but there's a lot of them that came up playing hockey, and you just saw them instantly emerging into top contenders. I think even now, Chronic on Gen G played hockey, and he has a very, very good understanding of the game. So it's crazy. It's just the team sports to Rocket League comparison, and like that bridge it out of any video game, I see it the most easily like applied, where you could say Rocket League is the most like a team sport compared to any other game. It's crazy. You have coaches, you have 3 players, and you have strategy and kickoff plays. It's awesome.
Nice. I would agree. You do see a little bit of that in per se Call of Duty and stuff like that, because you have your say strats, but it's super loose because plays get broken down in that a lot quicker than with something like Rocket League. Because I think also just your field of play for Rocket League compared to some of the other sports is so much smaller. Even say
Yeah.
like NBA 2K, you have the whole basketball court compared to Rocket League, man. You're moving so fast with the boost and everything like that. You cover ground in an instant there.
It's so dynamic now. The game is just we're moving to a point where like you can call tactics and you can call plays, but at the end of the day, like you have to have like a basic overall strategy because the game's moving too fast to be able to call like set plays like that all the time. You're not going to get them.
Now, I know you said you kind of barely knew about esports, if any at all,
Yeah.
but you've went on and you've coached some legendary organizations, OpTic, EUnited, Luminosity now. I mean,
Yeah.
how do you adapt your coaching strategies to suit these different teams and these bigger orgs? And what's it like going from, you said what, 24, you were, starting to
Yeah.
get messages and stuff like that, and now you've been in some of the biggest organizations in the world.
That's actually a good question. I mean, experience plays a long way into it. When I first came into, I would even say EUnited, I was very, very fresh faced and I had this idea for how things were going to go. And then esports happened, right? EUnited basically like shut down. We were not a good team, by the way, on EUnited. Just off the rip. I mean, those guys they worked extremely hard, but we did not get the results that we needed to do. And ultimately, EUnited was falling under the hammer of esports at the time. They weren't getting the sponsors, and they collapsed. So we got dropped from there. And at that point, I learned a lot about the way that things were going to be with pros, and comparatively to like bubble players and college kids, just coaching them is a different level because you can motivate college kids with the prize money. You win a tournament, you get this prize money. We get this, you could be a pro one day. When you're coaching solidified pros, there's a different level of motivation that you have to have, and there's a different level of respect that they have to have for you in order for them to say, okay, I trust what you're going to say, and ultimately I'll listen to what your call is going to be. Not to say that, again, not like these coaches are having like a ton of say where it's like we have to play this way, and once we do this, it's not like that. But being able to see things on the field and them respecting you, I think that's what I learned on EUnited was it's not just going to be Greg says this, we do that. It's going to be more of it's a collaborative effort. And I think once I started learning that, when Reynolds ended up basically saying, hey, I want you to coach like my team with AJ and me, I got to the point where, first of all, the gameplay EUnited to OpTic, much different. Okay. So I had to learn there too about what the top level of play was and what the weaknesses in that top level of play were. Even though I understood the game, it was, again, it's a learning curve where it's like, all right, these guys are playing much faster, much less mistakes. How do we beat it? So even that like first little period on OpTic was a little bit difficult, but you learn a lot about the way that orgs want you to be too. So then when you're a coach on EUnited, you have a lot of freedom. They're like, okay, do your coaching thing. On OpTic, it's like, hey, this is an established org. You just coach, but I'm gonna need you to do this, 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 and this. And I love that. I think OpTic did a great job of, especially in the fall, of handling like the way that we had a boot camp in Dallas. It was great. And then ultimately, again, OpTic decides to get out of Rocket League. It's a common theme right now. But then again, we all stick as a unit. It was me, Reynolds, Magic Bear, and then I had an analyst, Kevpert, still do. And we ended up signing to Luminosity without a third, and they took a big chance on us. And again, it's very, very similar to EUnited where it's more hands-off, but we are a very autonomous team. So learning how to operate with a huge org with like a huge presence and multiple employees above you compared to Luminosity and EUnited where it's like, it's a big org, but it's a small like family feel. So yeah, no, it's more learning like the esports landscape that that I think has helped me the most rather than the actual gameplay. Because I think the more and more you get comfortable and you start calling strategies, or you start calling or building that trust with players, I think once you start building those relationships, the coaching job gets easier. But the navigating the esports landscape, that's the stuff you have to learn. That's the hardest part.
Well, I gotta ask, what was it like playing for the Green Wall? I mean, obviously everybody knows who OpTic is. Over one of my shoulders, I have an OpTic jersey hanging because from Texas, so I love it. But I will never be able to fathom playing for that amount of fans and that frantic of a fan base, because even I, as an OpTic fan, look at some of the Green Wall and I'm like, man, you guys are insane.
Yeah, a lot of it is for COD, right? Like there's those OpTic fans that they're OpTic, so it doesn't matter what esport they're in, they're gonna follow you. And we definitely had those. But I think in Rocket League it was more like, oh, OpTic's in the game, they must be like the greatest team ever. So like when we signed to OpTic, like our expectation level was #1 in NA. If they're not #1 in NA, it's a bust. Then the OpTic fans start holding you accountable, where it's like, dude, you get some crazy messages from OpTic fans. I will not lie to you. But OpTic was like, as far as actually being on the org, it was a dream. When we walked into the old OpTic offices, it was like, again, not knowing much about esports, right? But you just hear about it all the time, like OpTic, OpTic, OpTic. Walking in there and the way that Hex and Hastro treated us was it extremely, extremely like humbling to know that there's orgs out there that care about their players that much and that they care about the success of their teams. But just the way that they housed us and took care of us, OpTic it's an unreal org. It really is.
Yeah, because that's true. Because it's not just OpTic. It's technically you were with OpTic and Envy. So
and Envy,
you had the best of
both
worlds.
It really, really was. That was a great period. That fall, like that 2022 period of time was unbelievable, because that Envy OpTic merger was so fresh. Everybody was still like, it was a booming business. I'm talking about, you would walk in there and you'd see an office and there's hundreds of employees in there, and it's for an esports org. It was just Hastro and Hex put together something there that was seriously like magical, and especially at that time, just to be a part of that, I'm extremely grateful for.
Nice. Now, you said it though, OpTic, of course, bows out of Rocket League. You've made the move to Luminosity Gaming with Magic Bear and Reddles with you. How has that team dynamic changed? Is it just that more hands-off approach again from the org? And what challenges did you face going from OpTic to Luminosity?
A lot of the same team dynamics are there, right? Like, we lost AJ, but Magic Bear and Reddle still had a really, really good relationship. So the coaching, like as far as like coaching them, it doesn't change much, because I think you bring in somebody like Cheese, and he is extremely coachable, like extremely coachable. So nothing changes there. I think as far as like going from OpTic to Luminosity, the in-person stuff at OpTic was a little bit different. But right now, like, to be honest with you, we're a better team. Yeah, it's just really that simple. So being able to coach, I think at the end of OpTic is when I decided that we had a terrible winter split at OpTic, and it was one of the worst splits of my life. It was one of the worst time periods of my life, period, in coaching, where, the guys weren't listening. The guys were very, very much thinking that we deserved to do better in fall. And I kind of believed them, to be honest with you. So I let the players take the reins a little bit more in winter, and we were terrible. We were horrible. And it's not to say that, it was because I wasn't coaching them, but I think it was because I wasn't as hands-on with the leadership aspect of it.
Yeah.
And by learning that I needed to take the reins of that, that's when you start seeing it winter 3. And that's when I brought on Kev, is because I was looking for a mental coach. I was looking for a tactical coach. I was looking for anything to help my team, because my team was going through it. Like, this was not fun times at OpTic, okay? As far as like the Rocket League side of things goes, because we were not good. But I did a lot of research into like how to be a better coach. I was doing a lot of self-improvement stuff. And then basically Kev he messaged me, because like I said, we were with each other back on the lights out days. And he messaged me like, hey, you want to see some stuff? And it had nothing to do with coaching. He just wanted to show me some stuff. And I just basically said, yeah, like, this is really, really interesting. And then he's like, you want to meet again tomorrow? I'm like, sure. And then he showed me again. And at this point, I was like, well, I think I should hire Kepfer. And then I asked him, I said, like, would you want to work for me? He's like, oh yeah, for sure. Like I'll do it for free. I'm like, hell no. Like we need to figure like out a way to get you paid. OpTic did not hire Kepfer. Let me just say that. Okay. I paid Kepfer out of my own pocket and I knew that was best for the team. Shout out to the players though for listening to Kev because it was not an easy transition to say, hey, we're going to bring in another like angle to this and we have another person going to be coming to our calls. He's going to be analyzing things a little bit differently than I would. And we're going to we're going to collaborate together. All the players welcomed him with open arms. So then on Luminosity, it switches because Luminosity hires Kepfer, which is, again, that's my utmost thanks to them because they took a chance on the coaching staff aspect of it, which I think you're going to start seeing more of in Rocket League.
Yeah, I have noticed that as well. Teams now bringing in 2 or 3 coaches. You have your main head coach,
Yeah.
but they are bringing on assistants now, so that it is.
It's huge. It's
Yeah.
huge for Rocket League. It really is because it's something that like we don't talk about enough, but it's hard to be a coach in games where you don't have an angle. Like let's just say I have an idea, bouncing that idea off of a player compared to bouncing the idea off of a coach that knows what he's talking about. Very, very different. Like I could bounce an idea off a player and they're like, what are you talking about? But when I bounce it off a coach and we can go back and forth and say, okay, this is the finished product, how we're going to deliver this message, it comes across better, the strategy is better, and the players take it a lot better too.
I'm trying to think of how to frame my next one because it's a big what if.
Yeah.
And I guess the only way is to be blunt. Do you feel like had you not let the players take the reins and if you're at the level of coaching that you're at now at the end of OpTic, do you think OpTic backs out or do you think it's just that esports bubble unfortunately started to collapse and OpTic had to just unfortunately bow out?
Wow. I think, to be fair, I think OpTic was in Rocket League because Envy wanted to be in Rocket League. And I think that OpTic was happy with us, and if we were going to be a really, really good team, there's a difference between OpTic and Envy too. Whereas OpTic is very, very much like they want you visible, they want you seen, they want you winning, right? Envy is like, I don't care if you never tweet ever, win a championship, okay? So Envy was more of like the improvement aspect. Where like in winter and fall, I knew we were struggling, we were in trouble, okay? But in spring, when we started improving and we got top 3, the envy aspect of it was very, very happy. The OpTic aspect was more, they're happy with Slater, they're happy with like, the content aspect of it, but I think that they wanted to lean more into Call of Duty. And I think that once you started seeing the moves they made in Call of Duty this offseason, you kind of understood why they had to cut some teams. And again, that's their game. Like they own that game. If OpTic's out of Call of Duty, I don't know what happens to Call of Duty. So it's good that they doubled down on that, but there was no like bad blood or anything. I just think that had I been a better coach earlier, like maybe fall, winter, maybe they'd still be here. If we finish top 3 completely, maybe. But that's a huge what if because they seemed like they were all in on Call of Duty anyway.
Gotcha. Like I said, it was a big what if, so I wanted to make sure I framed
It's a good question,
it right because man,
yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, it's all wishes and dreams at the end of the day with that one. But
They love COD. That's the point.
Yeah,
They love COD.
COD and Halo now that Halo's
Formal.
Yeah, exactly. Formal switched over. Though they're not going anywhere in those 2 sports at least for a bit.
Extremely loyal group. That's the thing I always say about OpTic is that they're loyal to their own, and it's something that in esports you don't get very often. So when you see how tight and like a tight knit group they are, it makes you want to be part of that because it's just a special group. Like that org, the brand, it's great.
Well, of course, we've been talking about some of the transitions and everything like that. You've brought Cheese from KOI to Luminosity Gaming. Can you share your thought process behind the roster changes and how you believe the new addition has really strengthened this team?
I think Cheese was, we tried out a lot of people in the offseason. We tried out the veterans of the scene. We tried out, JNEPS. We tried out Chicago. We tried out Justin. ultimately, when we tried out cheese, it was like we were kind of like trying to just scrape the barrel and make sure we're doing our due diligence. And I just saw this kid, like you knew about cheese from an aspect of like pros talked about him in a sense where like he's like the happiest kid of all time. And his energy is just infectious. I can't describe it any other way, but he's a spark plug. But when you get him into comms and you really really hear how much he can take over as far as giving information and being professional in that light, being coachable. As soon as I saw it in practice, I didn't even care how we played. Like it didn't matter what we looked like in scrims. It didn't. I saw that and I was like, guys, this might be it because you saw the main thing I saw was he developed a relationship with MB really really quickly, extremely quickly. Like I'm talking about, there's this weird thing that happens in esports, but like duos form, right, where you find like a teammate and all of a sudden they just read each other perfectly. The way that sometimes Cheese would approach a ball, and it would be one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. But the way that MB would start laughing when he did it and read it instantly, I'm like, okay, there's something here. Because then they start giggling together, and if they start laughing in the comms, and all of a sudden they're both off the ceiling and they're finding each other, it's tough. That is a tough thing to stop, and um, I think that we had to take the chance on that. And even though he was young and unproven, he wanted to. He always talks about all he wants to do is be a pro. All he wants to do is win a major. All he wants to do is win worlds. So it's like you hear that every day, and it motivates the other guys too. And I'm like, we just need that youthful energy. So Cheese was a no-brainer. Once I heard Cheese talk, I'm like, Cheese, no-brainer. Let's go.
Nice. Yeah, sometimes that's what you need is somebody that's going to come in hungry and
That's
basically
it.
wants it, rejuvenates everybody.
It did, especially Slater. It rejuvenated Slater big time too, because that was somebody that. Don't get me wrong, he's a veteran of our game, and he's a great leader. He needed a wake up call in terms of like his own self improvement, and he's done that beautifully. Like I think Slater's playing the best ball he's played his entire career right now.
Yeah, I can definitely see it. Of course, y'all sit second in NA standings right now. Uh, Third, sorry, my bad, third.
Third.
Uh, but y'all placed second at this
Yeah,
last qualifier. Uh, but y'all, of course, y'all lost to Space Station Gaming, but you lost 2-3. You go to 5 um, in a very winnable game, in my opinion. Then y'all run into NRG. NRG does take you 0-3, but yet this is a team that at, I believe, the draw, y'all beat NRG. So
yeah.
it's still a toss-up. There is nothing from this qualifier that you could say, man, why is Luminosity in the top? Because I have seen some of that. Again, this goes back to what we originally talked about, the disrespect for
Oh yeah.
NA that we've been seeing. And teams like yourselves and OG, I think, is another one that gets disrespected a lot. Everybody is kind of looking at y'all. Why are these teams in
Yeah.
the top form? But I think your track record and if you watch your gameplay and the improvement, like you said, from Slater and the boys, I think that all kind of is visible to anybody that actually sits down to watch NA. Now, to wrap
Agreed.
uh,
Agreed.
to wrap a whole bow on why I'm saying this, you yourself have competed in various tournaments, RLCS qualifiers, Renegades Cups, GexCon LAN events, everything like that.
Jesus. Yeah.
So I went deep with the research, brother.
GexCon is crazy. That's good. That's good.
Uh, how do you help these players in these high pressure situations, especially at Worlds where OpTic was, at Worlds where I'm I bet my money Luminosity will be at Worlds. So how do you prepare these guys for these pressure situations, and how do you prepare them for dealing with the casters and coaches and the negativity that comes their way?
You know, it's the negativity is just talking. Like a lot of things, I'm a pretty passionate person. Okay. So in emotional situations, there's been people in this community that have made me mad. I'm usually really, really good at keeping it under wraps publicly, right? But I am known to pop off at the mouth. So, but my guys, I think one of the things that I do is like I provide my guys a safe space. It's very, very comfortable, and when we're talking with each other. So when we're talking about pressure situations, we address it. It's like like we were talking about regional 3, right? There's a lot of expectations on its regional 3. Addressing how important it is and how nervous these guys are, because they're going to be. They have to be. But not hiding from it either. Like, it's okay to be nervous. It's okay because it's obviously important to us. You don't have to run away from it, but accepting it and being able to be like, okay, this is what we're going to do in those situations. And addressing, like, as far as coaching, I go back to, I would rather watch tournament gameplay, right? Because then I can see where we're nervous, where, like, what tendencies each player has, because I think everybody defaults in tournament. So you could have this huge game plan ready, and then scrims, you're like, wow, this looks perfect. We're going to win it all. And then in tournament, it changes because players are going to play a little bit different, a little bit more like timid. But I think the thing that we do really, that's true too. So when it's high, right? But when it's low and all of a sudden you're getting shit stomped, it's bad. So what I do in tournament, especially to prepare for these guys, like to help them in games, is I'm always talking. Always. If you see me, it's I don't stop talking, because the minute it gets quiet is the minute it all settles in, and then the thoughts start creeping in, and you're not locked into the game. If I can keep them locked in, and it's just like, hey, this is what happened here. What do you guys see in this play? And it's not like, hey, this is what you guys need to be doing. It's, what do you see that matches what I see? And then at that point, we could put together a game plan together. Like, that's it. And so in the comms on tournament day is different, but then the match day preparation is, a lot of analysis based, like behind the scenes replay review, getting them prepared for what they're going to see with different teams. But pressure is just, dude, I love being in competition. So I'm always talking. I'm always like yelling at my guys, hey, this is what we need to be doing here. This is what do you guys see here? How do you guys want to approach this situation? And then just having that whole team-wide communication, it just, on tournament day, it works really well.
Considering some of the recent exits and everything like that, we still see those mainstays like NRG, like Space Station, Luminosity coming back, though. How do you think the esport of Rocket League will evolve, and what challenges do you anticipate for players and teams in securing stable organizations? Of course, TSM just comes back and everything like that, but we've seen this, I guess, ebbs and flow of orgs in and out. So how do you think we see a stabilization of that?
It does. Well, there's no stability at all right now, because the format has changed so many times that you talk about, like back in the days of league play. League play was stable. You get a team, and like if you're one of those top like 16 or 20 teams, you get an org, you get a team, boom, you're in. Now it's just open format, where like then it goes to like the semi-open format, where like most often you're going to auto qualify into a spot. Orgs are pretty secure. Right now it's another different format change, so you're seeing a lot of orgs get a little bit timid and back out. Stability is going to come for when the esport is being communicated properly. I think that as long as there's communication on what's going on at LANs, and as long as the viewership is still good like it is right now, then the communication matched with the viewership, matched with good live events, you get orgs in. It doesn't matter what you're going to do, because there's big teams now that they're demanding viewers, and if the money's going to be there, especially with like sponsorships, and there's a lot of stuff that Epic's going through too that I think are going to be good for the future. So we have to be hopeful for the future. Blast comes in this year, and I wouldn't say throws a wrench in everything, but it's a completely new broadcast team. It's a completely new like org handling. It's not ESL anymore. So you definitely see, like you talk about ebbs and flows. We're doing this right now, but I think that Blast is going to put together a good product, and we have to be patient with it. But I really do think this is just a dip. I think orgs are going to come back when they start seeing the promise of it again, because they still see the final product that looks good, and they're like, wow, okay, viewers, the fans are still there, they're passionate, you're getting Twitter interactions, you're getting your marketability off, you're getting your visibility off. But we need the stability from the format POV, and hey, this is when the LANs are going to be. This is what's happening next season. This is what's happening with our game. And when they start seeing that, then orgs will say, oh, okay, you're communicating, we'll come back. That's truthfully what I think would happen.
Well, I've got two things for you real quick. One, super stoked to see Spaceman get picked up for y'all for your team games. Sean's been a guest on the podcast before. Great dude. Love talking to him.
Yeah.
Amazing pickup for the home games for y'all. Two, you talked about the visual and everything like that. I'm not sure if you can touch on it, but what happened with the decals and everything like that with
Oh, dude.
Luminosity?
Oh man. So
Am
we
I
were
opening a
given
can of worms? Like,
no, dude. It's just frustrating to even like think about it again. It's like we were told. So Luminosity came in a little bit late, even in the org decal process. Okay, but they gave us a like basically like a template, and it said, "Here's what you need. Here's what like your limitations are." Boom. And the big problem was they said matte paint finish, glossy paint finish, anodized paint finish. They sent it to us and we said, cool, do everything anodized. So we textured all this gold. Shout out to my analyst Kevpert. He sat there in like different like Photoshop, Alpha Console, working on these decals, making sure the gold matches the wheels, making sure that the white matches the specific set of like competitive wheels that everybody uses, making sure everything matches. We send it back to him. We don't hear anything. Okay, but we're thinking, all right, whatever, it got approved. So we got this notice back, it was approved. We start hearing a little bit of rumors from different orgs saying, hey, they approved ours, but they said no anodized. And I'm like, well, they approved ours and they never said no anodized. So all this time that, one of my coaches and the players sat there and tested, like I'm saying tested in game with Kev sat there and worked to make sure that they were like able to import it into their game. Do you like how it feels? Do you think like you're going to be able to wear it? We had it perfect. And then to see it come into the game the day of, not any communication before, the day of, was frustrating because all of a sudden it's glossy. That gold that was super, super gold in our game is now orange-ish. And it's like this like yellow. It's frustrating because like we spent so much time on that decal making it right because we wanted everybody to be able to use it as not like a not as like an org decal, but like it's like a competitive decal. We want
yeah,
it to be like where everybody's wearing it. And so when it wasn't the vision that we had in mind and we started hearing the feedback, it's frustrating because it's like, dude, we really, really tried on that decal, and to hear no feedback from them, that's frustrating. That's the type of stuff that I'm talking about. If you communicate it, we're not mad. Tell us it's not anodized. Okay, we'll give you a new look. We'll give you a new paint finish. Okay, but when you don't and you just put our thing in the game, that's frustrating.
yeah.
I will not lie.
We've talked about all the coaching you've done, playing that you've done, but you do individual coaching for individual players, or at least you used to do it uh,
Yeah.
through a service. Now, what unique challenges have you approached with continuing to do that, if you do still do that, if you, or have you walked away from individual coaching?
There's a couple players I still coach from there. But when I went into it, I was like, cool, you can make X amount of money per hour. And I'll just like, I'll book this, I'll book this, I'll book this, I'll book this. And I was starting to get burned out because there's a certain level that I like to coach at. And like, this is no offense to anybody that is this level, but I'm saying like, if you're a gold player and you're asking me to help you, like to help coach you, most of my answers are going to be, if you play the game more, you'll understand that you have to learn how to hit the ball. So you're asking me where should I rotate? It doesn't matter because at gold I could play actually backwards and just hit the ball, and as long as I'm hitting the ball consistently, I'm going to win. So at a certain level, you have to get to being able to control your car because at the end of the day, if you separate the ball from Rocket League, the only thing that matters is your car control. So a lot of that stuff has nothing to do with the tactical side of coaching, which is what I love. So if I could go back and learn how I want to coach those people, I would say I would actually put a rank requirement on it and probably say like GC 2 and above, like Grand Champ and above is what I'd like to coach because I don't like to teach mechanics.
Yeah.
That's not something I'm interested in doing. I want to talk about the intricacies of the game, and I want to talk about the way people think about the game and are able to use their mechanics. So um, the thing that I hated about coaching singular players was the ones that would come back and be like, well, I need to improve now. So like they would pay me a sum of money and then they're like, okay, I'm going to pay you again. And I'm like, oh brother, it's been a week. Like there's no, it's not about me right now. It's not about like, I actually feel bad taking money from people that they're like, okay, now what do I do? And it's like, still play the game. That's it.
No, I hear you there. I'm not the best Rocket League player by any means at all.
Yeah.
I just find the game fascinating. Put me on the sticks of a FPS and it's a different story. Rocket
Right.
League is
I'm the opposite of you. If you put me on 6 FPS, I look like uh, bad, horrible, a grandma.
Well, so I've got a two-parter. I do want to say, of course, thank you so much. I know I said it'd be like 30 minutes. We've
Dude, take your time. I
eclipsed
go for it.
that. But my final question for you is a two-parter. Now, where do you see Rocket League heading in the future, especially in terms of growth, competition, and the involvement of orgs? And what changes or improvements would you like to see from the Rocket League esports scene? Now, I know we touched on it briefly. You said better communication, but I'm talking now, 5 years from now. Where can you see this sport continuing to grow?
Where I see it growing is I think that the event side and RLC, like if you talk about RLCS, right? We've always held RLCS in this esteem that it's like if you're playing an RLCS, that's the main tournament. I'd love to see DreamHacks come back. I'd love to see other orgs getting in on grassroots efforts. So and pros being able to buy into them too. So like you see it a lot in Super Smash where like a lot of orgs, like even Luminosity hosts a lot of events and they'll say like all the pros come out and you compete at this LAN. I think RLCS should be a very, very vital part to Rocket League, and it should be the top notch of what everybody strives for, win worlds at RLCS. But these other live events, I want to see a lot more of those pop up, and that's all based on Rocket League's growth and if it sells, right? But as far as org involvement, the way that Rocket League is going with this open format and everything, it's going to be hard to see orgs stick around unless they have a top team. So I want to see Epic and Rocket League. I want them to listen to their community a little bit, and let's find ways to work together on how to make little to no cost changes to help support these orgs that are helping bring viewership and a positive ecosystem around your game. Let's bring them stability and some hope for the future, because I think without those orgs, you start losing coaches, right? Without those coaches, you start losing analysts. Without those managers, you start losing the heart of the game, which is a team sports game. This is not where you just sign up as an individual player like it's fucking Fortnite. It's not. This is not Fortnite. And you're not just going to sign up for a cash cup in Rocket League and then you're just playing with 3 people and now all of a sudden you win worlds. That's not how this game is going to work. So I think the ones that are going to be advantaged, for it to be advantageous to do so, those will be the orgs. Those will be the top teams. And then if they cannot help fund those orgs with providing an ecosystem, whether it be better seating for the open format, auto qualification so orgs have some stability, a better schedule so these players aren't grinding for 6 weeks at a time. We haven't had a weekend off in 5 weeks. But it's just constant go, go, go. So now I'm at the point where I just want to see Epic do better with their communication, and I want to see Epic do better with listening to the orgs and getting out that communication early so we know what to expect. Let's have a healthy, esport where we're not just saying, oh, let's hammer the players with 6 weeks of stuff because you guys couldn't figure out the schedule. Let's make this a healthy spot. That's all.
Yeah, I was gonna
That's
say
where I want to see more go.
is that because they came out late with the schedule and everything was kind of up in the air, but before the split started, it felt like.
I
Uh,
think they onboarded Blast late. I think that everything happened because Blast got on late. They were with ESL for so long with all their production stuff. And I think they onboarded Blast last second. And then they said, all right, RLCS season, when is it going to happen? And then they're like, well, we have to do it soon because everybody's been waiting. They do it. They had to rush everything out. They couldn't find land spots. They couldn't. That's really what I think happened. And then now we're at the point where I think that they're playing damage control. And that's why I'm hopeful for the future. I'm hopeful that with Blast being here and starting to understand the ecosystem a little bit.
we'll get a smoothing out process.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Nice.
But I'm hopeful that in 5 years that we're starting to see more of these small events pop up and even big events that are hosted by different people. Like, Gamers 8, a lot of people talk about like the whole Saudi Arabian thing. But it's a good event to have on top of RLCS. So even more that they don't have to be for that much money. It's just these pro players want to compete on LAN. Everybody will sit there and say you ball online, but on LAN, what do you do? That's what players play this game for. They want to go to a LAN, compete against Europe. They want to go compete against Australia. If you don't, what's this game for? We're an online video game with LANs, and that we are actually it's an esport. So
Yeah, I will say it almost feels like if I had to compare another esport with this, where y'all are at right now, I look at Rocket League like I looked at Halo after year one of Halo, where year two was still getting some hype, but
Yep.
it was such a long layoff until year two. But then after year two, the grassroots picked back up. Elevate Halo started doing events. Space Station Gaming started hosting their own tournaments. We see, Halo Opens happen this year, going into year three. We saw the Opens. So hopefully, it's like you said, hopefully that grassroots starts to kind of pick up. And hopefully y'all don't pull an Activision Call of Duty and don't allow these grassroots to happen,
Yeah.
because that's what's strangleholding COD from growing even
Following up,
further.
absolutely.
Uh, so hopefully Epic doesn't go that route. Uh, but I
I
think
agree.
that the comparison between where Halo was at and where Rocket League is at is at least in NA is very
I
very
agree.
even. Uh,
I agree. And that's the most important thing is that you have to be able to, like I said, the ecosystem around the esport matters. If the ecosystem around your esport is bad, even if Epic is making money, let's just say even if Activision is making money, it doesn't matter if the players in the ecosystem can't support it, because then you're going to have less players try to play your game. If you have less players trying to play your game, your esport's going to die because you're not going to get an influx of new players. You need fresh talent to keep it, you need to keep it fresh, right? You need to have a really, really good, solid product at the top for the top pros. Then you need to have these little tournaments that all these other people can play in, even pros if they wanted to, that has enough money where it's like, hey, an amateur team could go out there to North Carolina and win a tournament, but at the same time, Luminosity might be there. So it'll still be a fun tournament, but those grassroots things are what people, that's all we care about. I can't describe this anymore. That's all we care about. We want to play at LANs. We want to have these spots where our orgs, we want to build careers. So if our orgs aren't involved and the communication isn't good, then we're not going to be able to have careers in this game, and it's just going to be a cash cup Fortnite situation, which is absolutely horrid.
I do want to say thank you again. We've been going for almost an hour now. Talked a little bit before we got on here as well.
Yeah.
So I do, of course, thank you so much for sitting down with me. My final question. We'll end it after this. Give me your top three NA teams,
Including us?
including you.
Yeah, G2, Gen G, Luminosity.
All right.
G2, Gen G, Luminosity.
As expected, but I may maybe I'm getting a little too fanboyish, but I was expecting Luminosity to be in the 2 seat. But
Well, you want me to order them?
yeah, give them to me in order.
Well, you know what's funny is that I was just talking to Jack about this the other day, is that we actually don't even scrim Gen G that much. Like just the way our schedules work, like it hasn't happened much. But we also haven't played them in RLCS, and we also haven't played them in any offseason tournament because they didn't play in any. So our that Gen G Luminosity matchup that everybody's talking about, I don't know. We'll see. But I'm pretty confident against the team. I think that we have the right play style to make them sweat for sure. But I think that Gen G Luminosity you could switch around. You could, but I think it's going to be close. And for all the people saying that we didn't have hard wins, you're right. We haven't beaten any of the top teams, but we also have beat the bracket in front of us, and that's what this format calls for. If you win the games ahead of you, M80 could be in our position right now. OG could be in our position right now, but you had to win the games that were in front of you. Energy, same. So we're doing what we can. If we ball out this weekend, we'll be at Copenhagen. So
Yeah, I will say
that's how big.
Energy is the team that I have not knocking on the door for the number 4 spot. Uh, and I do hope to. I know I'm gonna. Well, I'll just put the good vibes out there. I know I'll see y'all at Copenhagen. It's where y'all will get the chance to showcase it at the world stage. Hopefully, I'm knocking some wood. Hopefully, we start seeing some grassroots things like Carmine Corp versus the World. That was amazing last year.
Right.
The one, or it was 2 Rocket League matches, 2 Smash matches, just Carmine bringing in a bunch of orgs just to have a fun time. That was an amazing event. So hopefully we see some of that come across the pond over this way, and we see orgs start doing stuff like that.
That'd be
Especially an
dope.
org like Luminosity that is so involved in multiple things. You just had a player go to the finals in the Smash Brothers tournament this past weekend. So Luminosity definitely could. I think, again, I don't know financials and stuff, but I think at least gameplay wise, y'all could be the org to step up and do something like that
That
for
would be
us.
dope, dude. We could be
But
like NA's last hope, like Carmine of NA. That'd be dope.
yeah. Well, again, I can't say thank you enough. Anything you want to say to everybody watching?
No, just appreciate your guys' support. Appreciate you guys being LG fans, and hopefully we make you guys proud.
Nice. Well, again, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Gamer's Edge podcast. I, of course, am your host again, Cody. I want to say thank you again to Greg. It means a lot. I know I'm just some random schlub sitting in my office talking with you, man, but I appreciate it like you wouldn't believe.
Of course.
And I'm definitely tuning in, rooting you guys on. And Spaceman, if you're watching, I'm listening to you on the calls, brother. So again, thank you guys. Until next time, guys. Peace.
The Gamer's Edge podcast is brought to you in part by Swift Grips. Get 20 off your next order by using code RIVAL at checkout.